Welcome to Nottingham. We're here by the banks of the River Trent. You can see the famous Trent Bridge in the background, the lights of the cricket ground and the city ground as well. We're here for a special joint broadcast to see how Britain feels now about Brexit.
Yes, so we are 10 weeks on then from the referendum. How have our attitudes changed towards Brexit, and are the divisions as deep today as they were before the vote?
I'm Anna Foster from Radio 5 Live, here with Christian Fraser from the BBC News Channel. I will also be talking about the pace of change, whether or not enough progress has been made, if people think it should have happened more quickly than it has, and perhaps crucially, how will Brexit look? What do Theresa May and the government need to do to make sure that our exit from the EU works for everybody?
Well, before Anna introduces you to our panel, let's tell you a little bit about why we're here in Nottinghamshire. Let me tell you a little bit about the county itself as well. So there are 1.1 million people in Nottinghamshire, and when you look at the city of Nottingham, it's pretty young because they've got 2 universities here. The big employers, the industries such as manufacturing and healthcare, in fact Boots, who have been here for 130 years, have their headquarters just down the way in Beeston. They're the biggest employer. But with regards to the vote, overwhelmingly Nottinghamshire voted in favour of Brexit, 58%. But then there were regional variations, so the market town of Mansfield, for instance, 70%, one of the top 10 Brexit votes in the country. The big surprise was that Nottingham itself, a city, voted for Brexit, albeit narrowly. And in terms of what they've had from the European Union along the way, well, they estimate around £100 million in funding since 2000, a good percentage of that going to the universities for research, and about 45% of exports here from the East Midlands as a whole going towards the European Union. Anna.
Well, we're here with a panel of viewers and listeners from right across the East Midlands, and for some expert insight as well, Professor Oliver Morrissey from the University of Nottingham. Let's start by talking about 5 Live's Comres survey from today that showed that 6 in 10 people felt positive about Britain's future in the EU. Let's put it to the test with our audience. It doesn't matter how you voted in the referendum, whether you voted to leave or whether you voted to remain. Let's have a show of hands. Who feels positive about the future? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are so slightly less positive than the poll in general. Let's get some quick views on how you think it's all gone so far. Andrew Baxter, you're a student. Now, you voted for leave. You campaigned for leave. How did you think things would look at this point, 10 weeks on?
About where we are now, to be honest.
Did you?
Yeah, I mean, this was never going to happen quickly. Realistically, I would want to see us start the process to leave, if possible, at the end of next year, because we have all these European elections, German elections, French elections, and until that's been resolved, it's going to be very difficult to negotiate anything that we really want.
So you're patient then? You're a patient
absolutely. But I'm patient because this has to be a patient process. We're coming out of something we've been in for 43 years. It is not. We're not coming out of it overnight. We're not coming out of it in a year or 2 years. The initial process is 2 years or more if we can extend it, but it is going to be a very long period of time before we have fully extricated ourselves from, if we want to, from a lot of things. We may wish to stay. I would like us to see us stay in the single market in the short term, for instance.
Yeah.
That's not something I want to see us come out of.
Lots to be negotiated, isn't there? Heather, you're a business consultant. Now, you, the morning after, you apologised to your 14-year-old daughter for the result. Why did you feel the need to say sorry?
I agree with Andrew. It's not something that's going to happen. There was not going to be significant change overnight, but I have real concerns about where we're going to be in 4 or 5 years' time. She's 14 now. By the time she hits 18, 20, coming out of university or looking for jobs, I think the financial and the economic fallout from Brexit may well be a lot clearer.
So you think it will damage her chances then?
I think there's a very real risk that she may well be.
Does she think that?
Yes. Yes, she does. She's aware enough to know that a lot of younger voters certainly were very much keener on remaining than leaving. Yeah. But obviously at the moment it's a very unknown quantity. But yes, there are some concerns about that, yes, certainly.
Yeah. Danielle, you are from Mansfield. Now that was it's one of the top 10 leave voting areas in the country. More than 70% of people in Mansfield voted to leave. You grew up there, you've been away and come back, you're back with your mum and dad. You voted to remain. So what kind of mood have you seen on the streets there in Mansfield? How do people feel?
I think there's probably a sense of smugness. I think because we haven't seen the Armageddon that the media were reporting was going to happen when we left, and so I think a lot of people are saying, "Well, we told you so. It's not as bad as you think it. It's not as bad as you thought it was going to be."
It sounds like a bit. You say smugness. It sounds like a bit of an atmosphere then.
I think I think it's just, well, we told you so. But obviously, I think the people who did vote Remain are sort of saying, well, we actually don't know what's going to happen. Nothing's actually happened yet anyway. So you can't make that call. And it might be a drip, drip, drip effect over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And in 50 years, we might look back and we might say, oh, what happened in June was the start of it. And that's where it all went wrong.
How do you feel about all of this then, when you see that going on around you in Mansfield?
I've got to be really honest. I've been, for the first time in my life, I've been really ashamed to be British this year. I mean, I'm glad we did so well in the Olympics because we did awfully in the football, and then the referendum on top.
It was
just, it's just. I just think it's been a really shocking year on the international stage. I think that we've really embarrassed ourselves as a nation. So I just want it to be over with now. I don't want another referendum.
And you're not one of the 6 in 10 that's feeling positive then?
No, not at all. But you know, I'm not. I don't want it to be bad. I just, you know, we've had the vote. Let's just get on with things now, and let's just try and rebuild the relationships that we've broken with the other countries within the EU who obviously didn't want us to leave. Let's try and salvage that, and let's just move forward and stop talking about it, because I think it's really embarrassing what happened.
Yeah. Speaking of moving forward, Peter Lander, you've got a business. One of the things that made you lean towards leave was the amount of EU red tape. You felt it was strangling your business. It wasn't benefiting it. Has anything changed in those 10 weeks since the vote?
Not much has changed since the referendum, other than the fact that we've seen a decline in the value of the pound. Business appears to be continuing as normal across Europe, and we live in a commercial world, and commercial transactions that were originally taking place will continue to take place. I don't think that for sake of Brexit we will just stop trading with our European partners. We are part of Europe, and I'm sure life will continue as normal.
It's interesting, isn't it, Christian? People at this stage, 10 weeks on, there are a lot of opinions, a lot of things that people have felt, but it's so much about the facts as well, isn't it?
And interesting listening to Danielle, who was pointing back to the sort of advice that we got from the experts at the time of the referendum debate. Of course, we had experts that lined up on both sides. Let's plug in then to Oliver Morris. He's Professor of Development Economics at the University of Nottingham. Danielle was saying we've not seen the Armageddon that we were talking about in Project Fear. But we've had a word of warning today from the Japanese ambassador to Britain, who's saying if this doesn't work for us, we're quite happy to move our companies to Europe.
Well, one obvious reason we haven't seen anything dramatic yet is because, as Danielle said, the only thing that's changed since the 23rd of June is we know the outcome of the referendum. We still don't know what will happen, how it will happen, and when it will happen. But with multinational companies, and Japan is just one example, the way multinational companies operate is they'll relocate activities if it's to their advantage to do so. And it's quite likely that aspects of Brexit will certainly reduce the benefits of being in the UK for some multinationals.
So if multinationals do what they want, why don't we just pull out now and renegotiate our way back into the single market?
Well, there's a legal problem of trying to do it now, but there are also, there's a broader legal problem, particularly if you think of it as multinationals, global trade. It's a very global system, and what a lot of people neglect is it's a rules-based system.
OK. Oliver, for the moment, thank you.
We'll talk a lot more about the economy. Let's talk, first of all, though, about one of the really big issues, something that everybody had an opinion on during the referendum debate, and that's immigration. We'll start with Steve and Ankunda. Steve, immigration was one of the things that really informed the way that you voted, wasn't it? Why?
It was one of them. There were a lot of other issues as well, but it was just purely the level of migration, and it had been high for a number of years. But that was only one of the issues, sovereignty, and also the issue of parliamentary democracy. The control probably was the best. That feeling that you wanted to have control of your borders, but also other issues as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because Ankunda, you're training to be an immigration advisor, aren't you? So yes. Have you seen any difference in the last 10 weeks of the number of people who are wanting to come to the UK? Have people changed their mind?
No, I wouldn't say there's any difference in particular, and I think that what's happened about vote leave, and he said there are other issues like sovereignty and just not just about immigration. I think I think it's been an emotional reaction. People feel that there are more people in this country when in fact people come and go. And I think really what Brexit has shown is that we have not much confidence in Westminster. We want Westminster to invest more into our own communities and invest more in terms of international development as well. So that people from poorer countries don't feel the need to come over here. But at the same time, we want to have that diverse and rich environment that we do live in. I've got many friends from Spain, many friends from around the world, for example, who their own countries are suffering. But I think this is, I think by being here, actually by remaining in the EU, it's a much better situation than actually just having this knee-jerk reaction to kick everybody out.
Yeah,
for
what
no
do you think
real
about
reason.
that, Steve? Then you've got those two, you're talking about rich and diverse at one end, overcrowded at the other. How do you reconcile those two views?
I think what we're talking about is control. It's about levels, and it's about a level of inward migration that the country is comfortable with.
And do you think it's too much at the moment?
I think at 330,000 it
Net
is.
migration.
Again, you're looking at building a city the size of Nottingham every year and a half. I think that kind of size, that level, is probably too high. I mean, David Cameron sort of wanted to get it down to the tens of thousands. Whether he'll ever achieve
Not his job anymore.
Exactly.
It's Theresa May's
and
job
of course,
now.
Theresa May has echoed that. But again, whether there's a political will to do that, we'll see.
Yeah.
But
On that topic of diversity, I want to bring Danny in because you're a dental nurse. You work in a dental clinic, and a while ago you had a lot of Polish people working in that clinic. Did that make things run more smoothly? Did you have more manpower? Could you offer more appointments than you would have done if those people just weren't available to you?
I think at the time when I was working in that surgery, because I'm now a locum, definitely we had a lot of patients that were from particularly the Polish community. So we would have had a lot less people in that area. I think overall most of the patients that we do see are British throughout the whole of the UK. But at the time it was that particular clinic that was quite based with Polish people.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, just as a brief thought, do you think that the NHS will still function the way it does? I mean, if you look at Nottinghamshire in general, you've got about 2,500 people from the EU working in the NHS contributing. If those people were gone, would the NHS struggle?
I don't think the NHS would struggle at all. I think that, to be honest, I think that the immigration and things like that isn't an issue within the NHS.
It's interesting. As you were talking to me there, Ankunda, you looked at me. You think it would struggle?
I think it would struggle. I think a lot of is put on the blame to immigrants, and my own family. My dad is a doctor. He came here during the time of Idi Amin and Milton Obote, and it's just this whole culture that we want to blame other people for our own problems. In fact, I think the problem is really the buck lies at Westminster, not at the EU, and I think people need to stop blaming immigrants for all our problems. Then a lot of people I meet who are immigrants, they work incredibly hard to feed and fund their families.
I just want to get a quick word from Umar as well, because you're a student. We're talking about that diversity. You're supposed to be going to Spain next year, isn't it, to study on the Erasmus programme. Is that still happening?
Well, thankfully the Erasmus programme is still happening, and we'll have to see whether that will continue for us in the UK. I think it will, because other countries outside of the EU, like Turkey, Macedonia, Norway, are still in the Erasmus programme. But I think it sends out a negative message to European students that we are a less friendly, more hostile country for them to come and study in, and maybe it'll dissuade some of them from coming, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because, Christy, that people's opinions, we have positive opinions of immigration, and we have negative ones as well.
Well, it's interesting listening to Steve, isn't it, who says it's not about the immigrants, it's about the level of immigration, but we know around the country there's been plenty of racism and abuse for those who are here. I want to introduce you to Pastor Paulina Wawicka. She is a Polish minister at two Lutheran churches, one here in Nottingham, one in Northampton. You've been here for how long?
In UK, 5 years.
5 years.
Nottingham, 1.5 years.
And because you're Polish, you didn't get a vote. So what was it like the morning after the vote when you found out which way it had gone?
I was crying out loud. I was very, very upset.
You were crying?
Yes.
Okay. And I imagine that many of your congregation, many people in your congregation are from where? From Eastern Europe, from Central Europe?
From the world, from Germany, from Finland, from Slovakia, from Czech Republic, from Poland, from China, from Africa, Tanzania, Ghana, America.
And of
Canada.
course, a lot of them call their minister. And what
Yes.
do they tell you when they ring up?
The situation changed for many of them after the Brexit because of hate crimes. This is something we never expected is going to happen like that.
What kind of hate crimes?
There are situations in parks or playgrounds when kids and their mothers and fathers are asked to speak English because they are in England. They shouldn't be speaking Polish anymore, for example. Also, the kids are asked at school when they're going to go home, and kids don't understand the situation. They say, "We are home. We are home. This is our home." And also, a recent situation happened for my German parishioner. Her trees were cut off in her own garden at night, put into the bins, and she could hear few nights, one after another, "Nazis go home. Nazis go home."
You feel British, I presume. You've been here 5 years, or you feel pretty well integrated into British society.
I feel really integrated, yes.
The Prime Minister has tried to give as much reassurance as she can. Does it make any difference to you? Do you want to stay?
This is not about me at the moment. It's about my churches. I have 2 churches. I have to work for them. Beautiful people.
But do you feel welcome?
I have many supporters around me in the Church of England, many friends, British people who are with us in this difficult time. So we feel supported, but we feel not secure in many ways.
Less welcome than you were?
Less welcome, and in many ways we can say we feel rejection in the air.
Ricky Cook, who's sitting next to you, you're Labour. You voted Labour at the last election. You voted Brexit as well. I dare say, Paulina, you'd recognise that it's not just about the divisions between European people and British people. It's also divisions between those who voted for Brexit and those who voted Remain, and the sort of attitudes they have to people who voted Brexit.
Yeah, it's like I'm working class. I voted Leave. Quite a lot of my friends and family are working class, and they voted Leave. And the abuse what some of us have had on like social media, or even just watching the media and watching people speak about us and calling us thick, ignorant, racist, it's just really showing the ugly divisions in society. And I don't think it's just the racism that's the problem. There's that as well. And I think as a whole, it's like Brexit has shown all the divisions in society, and it's brought them to the front.
And do you think the delay in finding some solutions to Brexit, do you think that's part of the problem? If they could get on with it quickly, that it might heal some of the division?
Yeah, I think whilst ever we keep on talking about Brexit, we're going to be having the same arguments over and over again. I think we need to come up with a solution, decide what we're going to do, and like move forward.
OK, Ricky, Paulina, thank you very much for the moment. So there you go, and there's still lots of division in the country, isn't there?
Yes, so many mixed opinions. We're on Facebook Live as well. 3,000 people having a discussion on there at the moment. Let me just share some of those views with you. Gillian Perry says the UK will be stronger. We won't be bullied by other countries. It'll open up other opportunities in the end for us. Life will be the same. Adrian Foley says it's been over 2 months now. We still don't know anything. Just a lot of talk and no action. If you're just joining us, we're in Nottingham. It's a special joint broadcast on BBC Radio 5 Live and the BBC News Channel.
Keep those comments coming in. I want to turn for a second to the economy because, of course, it's a crucial part of the debate. Some might say perhaps the most crucial. And I'm going to bring Peter back in. So, Peter, you are the MD of DSL Group. It's a company that imports into the country. You supply petrol stations. You've got other interests as well in commercial properties. You voted out, even though you've got Eastern European workers. And as a consequence of that, because the pound has suffered, your imports are more expensive. So what do you need from the government in the coming weeks and months?
I think what we need from the government is a timetable so that as a businessman we know when things are going to happen, and that will add certainty to our plans, and we can then plan accordingly. As things are, you know, there is a level of uncertainty that doesn't allow us to plan long term.
You think there's been too much drift?
I would say so. You know, certainly, you know, we have you know, various varying views, and at this moment in time, there is a huge level of uncertainty.
Heather, who's sitting next to you, you're a business consultant. You voted Remain. Do you think it's possible to have the sort of access we want to the single market with all the passporting for those financial services that are so important, and at the same time have the control over our borders that we want?
Personally, I think that's a bit cake and eat it. I do not think that we're going to get everything on our wish list. If you look at countries like Norway and Switzerland, who have some of those benefits but also have to take some of the rough bits along with the smooth bits, I think it's inevitable that in a negotiation we will have to compromise some of those issues. I think the tricky part for the government is going to be deciding which of those issues they are solid about and which of those they're going to have to find a way forward that is clearly not going to suit everyone, but is going to lead us to a workable economic position, because we are going to need to trade. That's hugely important.
And as a business consultant, when you do the rounds, are people reserving judgment? Are they waiting? Are they delaying decisions?
I think there's certainly been anecdotally some delay in perhaps business development work, marketing work. I think that was particularly apparent at the start of, just immediately after the vote, because there was a feeling that we might end up in a general election very rapidly if the leadership arrangements with the Conservative Party didn't come together quite quickly. Obviously, we still don't know who's going to be leading the Labour Party at the next general election. And I think there's a sense that is an unknown quantity. Businesses just being a little bit careful about some of that extra spend, and obviously looking very carefully at what the economic outturn of things is going to be too.
And I can see Andrew sitting next to you, who was shaking his head at one point about the single market. I mean, you actually voted out, didn't you? You were a politics student at Nottingham University. Some might say that was quite a risk because, of course, you have more at stake in this as a student if it goes wrong.
I also have more opportunities, though. But really important point, there might be only one way, that we could still be in the single market and restrict free movement. And it's adopt a position that basically Norway has, and Iceland and Liechtenstein. And there are safeguard measures within the EEA agreement. This is something that Dr. Richard North has been talking about extensively. And if you want to see an explanation of this, you should Google Richard North, EEA solution, he calls it. And we may be able to use that to restrict free movement, but that's the only way. The idea we're going to have some kind of bespoke bilateral agreement where we get everything we want and don't have any of the downsides is nonsense. We will be paying financial contributions, we'll still be in the single market, obeying single market legislation, but we might be able to amend free movement, and that's probably the only thing we could try and do.
Oh, there's people who want more than that, Andrew, much more than that. Actually, we do overlook, though, don't we, Anna, this sort of generational divide that there is?
Yeah, the figures really bore that out, didn't it? And actually, Andrew Brown, you bucked the generational trend. You're a farmer, so you voted to remain.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at what's called total income from farming, over 60% of it comes from EU support payments. And the reason we have EU support payments because my cost of production is above what I can sell my products for.
So
now,
can you survive without the EU as a farmer, do you think?
I think it'll be very difficult. I think in the next 10 years there'll be 30,000 less farmers in this country.
So have you thought about what you'll do then, 2020?
Well, I mean, everyone's saying the same thing. Of course, nothing's happened, nothing's changed, so we don't know what's going to come forward down the line from the DEFRA, the Ministry of Agriculture. But obviously this is a massive wake-up call for the Westminster Village. And I really never did understand why they called it the Westminster Village, because all the villages around our way only have one idiot in them. So, I mean, but, I mean, referendums have no part in a parliamentary democracy. I mean, if you start having referendums for things like capital punishment, forced repatriation, you'd have them back tomorrow. I mean, it's a nightmare. I mean, we've seen this happen before in the 1930s.
You're cross, aren't you?
I am. I'm really worried for our kids.
Is this your livelihood at risk?
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm really worried for our kids. We've got 3 young kids, and one's at university just started. And you think, well, what's going to happen? It happens throughout history. Old people sending young people into oblivion. And I'm, as you say, still very cross about it.
I hardly dare ask. Do you think the government have promised to make a success of it? Theresa May says Brexit means Brexit and she will make it work. Do you believe the politicians can make it work?
Well, that's a nonsensical statement because there's no definition of Brexit. So saying something means something that doesn't exist, it's a meaningless statement. It's a soundbite for a politician.
Faye Quigley, now do you remember how you voted back in 75? Because you're a Leaver.
Yes, I voted no.
You did?
Yes.
And
yes.
your views haven't changed in all that time?
No, they haven't changed. Like the gentleman next door, I didn't get any money for my business. I had to pay for new equipment, which I didn't need, and rules and regulations. I'm endlessly ticking boxes and filling out forms. And that's one of the reasons I voted. And I think a lot of small businesses went that way because of this form filling that just is absolutely ridiculous. I have two sons. One came back from India on business on Saturday, and my other son's just gone out to Nigeria on business. So there's a big wide world out there, and I think we should use it.
Do you think there's been anything positive from the EU? The money that's gone into the areas around here, the regeneration money, has that made any of it worth it for you?
I do think, yes, I do think there is some positive things come out of it. But I think that the money that we save should go back in and to the farmers if they need it, and help other people and businesses.
Where's it coming from?
Well, this is the question. So many questions. I think that's one thing, Christian, that we really see, don't we? People have, at this stage, all of you, have so many questions, maybe not so many answers.
It's fascinating, isn't it? I think perhaps the government bought itself some time through the summer with this mantra, Brexit means Brexit, but everyone here today has talked about timetable. They want to know when things are going to happen and what's going to happen, and I think that is going to heal some of the division.
Yeah, let's have one final show of hands. When Theresa May says Brexit means Brexit, how many of you believe that that's what will happen and that's what will be the end result? Show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So more than half of you, but not Andrew, our farmer. Not convinced. So many questions, not too many answers. What will Brexit look like?
Thank you very much for being with us here in Nottingham this afternoon. Thank you very much to our panel as well. And thank you to our listeners both on 5 Live and our viewers on the news channel. We're going to be continuing the debate.
Yeah, you can still have your say on Facebook Live as well. More than 3,000 people on there talking at the moment. Thank you for all your comments. Thank you for all your input for our special joint broadcast here in Nottingham.
Thanks. Bye-bye.